We're going to talk about the digestive system. This starts on page 462 in your textbook pages. And so we're going to flip over to 464. And it asks you, as you read, to underline the main functions of the digestive system. So when it says, what is the digestive system? Your cells need a lot of energy for their daily activities. Cells use nutrients, which are substances in food for energy, growth, maintenance, and repair. The digestive system breaks down the nutrients in your food that you eat to smaller molecules that can be used as building materials and that can provide energy for the cells. It interacts with other body systems to obtain and use the energy from your food. For example, the blood, which is part of your circulatory system, transports those nutrients to the other tissues. In order to extract energy from nutrients, your cells need oxygen. So the respiratory system is responsible for taking the oxygen from the environment into our body, and your nervous system controls and regulates the functioning of the digestive system. So as far as the main functions, we would say that it breaks down the nutrients in your food so that you can have building materials and energy for the cells. There are two types of digestion. Digestion is the process of breaking down matter or food into a form that can pass from the digestive system into the bloodstream. And those two types of digestion are mechanical and chemical digestion. So inside the stomach, it says there are deep pits and grooves in the stomach lining that help grind the food. They want you to infer, if the stomach lining is made up of deep muscular grooves, how might these structures help the stomach to break down the food? So we know that your stomach does a lot of mixing and churning. That movement is caused by those muscles in your stomach, so that's going to help with digestion. Mechanical digestion is breaking, crushing, mashing of food. It's a physical change because the food only changes shape. Chewing is a type of mechanical digestion. Chewing creates smaller pieces of food that are easier to swallow and to digest than the larger pieces are. Mechanical digestion increases the surface area of food that will help with chemical digestion. Chemical digestion is the process in which large molecules of food are broken down into smaller molecules so that they can pass into the bloodstream. So if we have a complex carbohydrate and we break the chemical bonds until it is simple glucose, then that is actually changing the chemical structure. So chemical digestion results in a chemical change to the food molecules because they change into different substances. One of the things that helps with that are enzymes, which is a chemical that the body uses to break down large molecules into smaller molecules. They act like chemical scissors, or they cut up the large molecules into smaller pieces. And because mechanical digestion has increased the surface area, that increases the ability for the enzymes to break down those nutrient molecules. You're going to classify each of these as being physical or chemical. In your mouth, your teeth grind food. Salivary glands release a liquid called saliva, which contains enzymes that break down sugars. In the stomach, muscles contract and grind food into a pulpy mixture. And in the small intestine, most nutrients are broken down by enzymes. So you're going to answer each of those. On to the next page where we talk about the different parts of the digestive system. It's important that you realize that digestion begins in the mouth and that it's both mechanical and chemical. Your teeth and your jaw muscles crush and break the food, but you also have saliva, which is a liquid, and you have salivary glands in your mouth that make that saliva, and it contains an enzyme that begins chemical digestion of starches in your food. And the actual name of that enzyme is amylase. Just for extra information. The esophagus, once the food has been chewed, it's swallowed and it moves through the throat into a long tube called the esophagus. There are waves of muscle contractions called peristalsis that move the food into your stomach. So gravity helps, right, if you're sitting upright or standing, but the muscles can actually move the food even if you're not standing. So when you consider the order of the organs in your digestive system and their position in your body, top to bottom, right? Why do you think digestion is more efficient if you're sitting up rather than slumped over or lying down? That has to do with gravity. Make sure you put it in a complete sentence. Your stomach is a muscular bag that crushes food and contains acid and enzymes for killing bacteria and breaking down proteins. The walls of your stomach contain layers of muscle, happen to be smooth muscle, so that the stomach walls can churn and mix food. The final step in the process of mechanical digestion is here at the stomach. Now, there are tiny glands in the stomach that release a special type of acid that is so harsh it kills most bacteria that might be swallowed with your food. Not all, but most. There is a thick coating of mucus that protects the stomach lining from that acid so it doesn't digest itself. There are glands in the stomach that also release enzymes that begin the process of breaking down proteins. There are enzymes that break down the proteins that can only function in an acidic environment of the stomach, so they don't work anywhere else. Then after the stomach, you're going to go into the small intestine. Now, it looks like it connects to here, but it's actually behind that, so it's this part right here. Food actually spends just a few hours in your stomach, and it is reduced to a soupy mixture called chyme. As the chyme leaves your stomach, it moves into the small intestine, which is a muscular tube where most of chemical digestion takes place and most of the nutrients are absorbed. Finally, it moves into the large intestine, which is where most of the water and nutrients are absorbed. And then you have a solid waste that is then eliminated from your body. So we're actually going to look at a diagram of your digestive system, and we're going to label this. If you will, fold these in so that we can kind of cover up our answers if we were ever to quiz ourselves. I'm going to fold them in like this. So if it's like this, it's upside down. So this is right side up. So we're starting here. The food enters your mouth, and that's where chemical digestion from the amylase in your saliva begins. It's also where mechanical digestion begins with the tearing apart of the food by your teeth and your tongue. These are your salivary glands that produce your saliva, which contain the enzyme that starts breaking down starches. This long tube that connects your mouth, or your throat rather, to your stomach is the esophagus. And then your stomach, after it leaves your stomach, it's chyme, or a soupy mixture. It's going to go into your small intestine. Now the small intestine is actually very long, but it's not very big in diameter, and so that's why it's called the small intestine, because the diameter is small. You also have, this is where the small intestine connects to the large intestine. There's a little finger-like appendage there. That's your appendix. And it's not really that much of a function. In fact, a lot of people have theirs removed. But then the food goes into the large intestine, which travels up, over, and down. So this is the large intestine. And finally, this part descending here is the rectum, and the actual opening or exit of the digestive system is the anus. This is the pathway that the food travels. Now, there are 3 other organs that assist in adding some enzymes and fluids to the food mixture as it travels, but the food doesn't actually go through them. The largest here is your liver. Underneath the liver is a small organ called the gallbladder. And then this that looks kind of like a tongue is the pancreas. The pancreas is very important. That's where our insulin is made. If your pancreas is not working correctly, then that's called diabetes, and you might have to take extra insulin via a shot to replace what your pancreas is not making. So that is actually going to be glued onto page 31, and we're going to take some notes about the digestive system, which kind of summarize what we read and what we've labeled. So main function of the digestive system is to break down the nutrients in your food, and those can then be used as building materials or provide energy for your cells. Of course, it interacts with other body systems. We know none of these systems work totally by themselves in isolation. So of course it's going to work with the muscular system and the circulatory system and the nervous system. They're all interconnected. Two types of digestion. This is the one that is the physical change or the physical breaking, crushing. That is called mechanical digestion. And then the one that is actually a chemical change is called chemical digestion. We said there were 5 evidences that a chemical change had occurred. That was a color change, that was unexpected, and a gas produced, light produced, temperature change, and a precipitate forms. But in digestion, we have 3 of these. We do see a color change, we do see gas produced, we do see temperature change. So your body temperature goes up when you're digesting and releasing that energy. There is a color change, like if you eat pizza, it's usually a white crust and red sauce and orange cheese or white cheese and a red pepperoni, but when it exits your body, it's brown. That's an unexpected color change. And then, of course, we know gas is sometimes produced during digestion. So where digestion begins is the mouth. From the mouth, it goes into the esophagus. That is where we have those muscle contractions called peristalsis. And then it goes into the stomach, which is a muscular bag, and it contains acid and enzymes, which is a part of chemical digestion. Layers of smooth muscle help to move the food along and churn it. That churning and mixing is mechanical digestion. And then it enters the small intestine, where most of the nutrients are absorbed. And there are many folds called villi in your small intestine that increase the surface area. Then it goes into the large intestine. And the waste material is called feces or fecal material. And finally, the rectum or the exit, which is the anus, to exit the body. And then we have nutrients being absorbed. We have your pancreas, which creates fluids that help break down all of proteins, carbs, fats, nucleic acids. And we also have, and then we have the liver, which makes and releases bile, and it's stored in the gallbladder. We're going to trim this and we're going to glue it onto page 30.